Dr. Keri Krieger is joining me on the show today to discuss perimenopause and menopause transitioning for women through the lens of Chinese medicine. Hello, Keri. How are you?
Hello, Alex. I am very well and very excited to be having this conversation with you.
I'm excited too, in wanting to talk about not us personally being 48 and in the very thick of the perimenopause playland.
Neck deep in it.
Neck deep. But actually about this subject, which I'm sure we will tangent into personal experience, but the subject through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine. I speak to my acupuncturist, Kieran, often about this phase. And interestingly, he's very hard to get into these days, but I did this month where I saw him every single week. And in that month, I didn't have a single hot flash. I had the most beautiful, calm, cruisy, chilled month that I had had in a really long time. And I think that speaks volumes. So we're going to, yeah, right. We're going to harness a bit of TCM power through this subject and everything that you've helped clients with over the years through doing treatments, but also speaking to them and putting together plans for this stage of life, because it's not just about the treatment you get and the herbs you take. It's about so much more. There's a big invitation, isn't there?
It's enormous, yes. And I think it's easy to treat it much like something that you've caught. I can recall in my younger...
So well put. Maybe it's this problem we need to sort out.
I think in my very early 40s, when I still felt like it wasn't happening to me, I was like, I wonder when perimenopause is going to happen, like it was going to jump out from behind a shrub somewhere and like land on me. No, that is not how it works.
No, and I do laugh with different practitioners I've had on the show and friends about that first moment where you Google, once you start to notice a few symptoms, you Google, so how long is this going to last for exactly? And it's like from, I think it's 4 to 11 years is what the standard internet reply is. And you're like, okay. They seriously ran out of budget on female biology design when it came to this age group. They're like, okay, good luck. Look, it's going to get a bit crazy, but we've run out of money and time, so we're out of here.
Yeah, it's like you get to the last 4 pages of the textbook and it was like, menopause, it happens. Good luck, the end. And you're like, okay, so I do believe there's some research required here. Let's see.
Yeah. So I want to start by asking you, you believe that this generation now going through it are going to be some of the wisest and wildest elders of tomorrow. Do you feel like, why is that? What are you seeing?
Look, partly that's a belief, partly that's a hope, a deep, deep desire that us Gen Xers, you know, are the first really generation, their first cohort. We're certainly the largest cohort. So the stats quite a number of years ago were like by 2025, there'll be 12% of the population. So that number is probably growing. It's probably a little bit fuzzy on either end, depending on how they were measuring actually being in peri, but oh my goodness, so much has to change. And I think as a cohort, we have the education, we have the that kind of, I don't know, if we look at it in the reverse puberty that it is, we're sort of channeling a little bit of smells like teen spirit, you know, and bringing that outspoken energy into changing and claiming our own stories and changing the current story about, you know, falling off this cliff once you hit the age of 40 or 50, you know, and actually, you know, standing up and being counted and asking for the actual stats, the science, the research into our female physiology. I mean, the fact that it's not there is an absolute crime.
Yeah, I remember saying to my son recently, do you realize, sweetheart, he's 14 and he's very pro-women. I've raised him that way. And I said, do you realize that almost all medical research that was done on humans until after I finished schools about the mid-90s
Yes.
was done
Yes.
on men, and not
Yes.
only men, but young military men. Just such a
the
bizarrely
tiniest weird little
exceptional
cohort
group of humans.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, why? There's so many different types of people. I'm like, bingo,
Because it
sweetheart,
was
bingo.
easy. Because it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think it's also really refreshing that our generation is talking about it. I mean, I remember like recently I just sort of asked mum, I remembered she'd had a hysterectomy and she was just kind of told, yeah, it's probably just best to get it all taken out at this point. And
You
she
don't
had,
need any
I
of it.
think she was only just 50. And it wasn't because there was cancer or anything like glaringly alarming. And I just think, wow, okay, so we actually have come a really long way
We've
for our
come an
generation to
enormously
start
long
stepping
way.
through this.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be, sharing and talking about our experiences and feeling the shame and talking about it anyway and saying we are not handing this on to our, daughters, nieces, and so on. Like, it has to stop with us, really. We need to open those doors and, create that dialogue.
Absolutely. And it's usually, you kind of alluded to it when you started talking, perimenopause is usually synonymous with it's a bore, it's a chore, it's chaos, it's all these symptoms we need to fix and treat. A real no thank you vibe. And I get that. I'm here, so I can put my hand up and say, some days I'm like, well, this can all just stuff off.
Yeah.
But inside the crazy, you use the word golden opportunity.
Yeah,
and I like that because I've been toying with the idea of where's the hidden invitation here.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that.
So from a Chinese health perspective, there's so many, myths and storytelling pieces around it, but the 3 golden opportunities are an invitation to really, really care for ourselves and to create optimal health in our future. And so those 3 opportunities are our period, our postpartum, and our perimenopausal experience. And it's a window of time, either each month or at the end of our pregnancy, if you have children. But certainly this peri season is an opportunity to really, really care for yourself in a new way, to hear what's going on in your body, because the symptomology that comes up, some of it is to be expected and quite across the board. But most women's experiences, whilst, let's just say 8 out of 10 will say, yes, I get hot, the way that they get hot, when they get hot, how long it lasts, how they feel with that, every woman's experience is different. And that's an invitation to her to hear what's not working, where she needs to take care of herself in a really, really practical sense, where she might need to look and take care of herself as far as, mental and sensory experiences, whether there's things that you need to kind of deal with, dial down in your life. But it's an invitation for the kind of health that you want to claim in your older years, most importantly. So this season of up to maybe, 8 years, 10 years maybe, I read one thing earlier on today when I was having a look at a few different pieces, and it said 4 years. And I was like, really? Well, that'd be fun, wouldn't it, if it was only 4 years? But it's a window of opportunity. It's not going to last forever. You don't have to cancel your entire life. But from a Chinese health perspective, it's an opportunity to really double down, hear what needs to change within yourself, mind, body, spirit, and create the elderhood that you want to have, to be fit and able and, you know, sharp of mind and, you know, strong in your body as you age.
I love that. And I want to then ask you about modern times, because the invitation to dial down and really, you know, have some retrospective time to peel back all the things that you don't need to be doing. I get that. And I actually see estrogen leaving the building as a fantastic helper in that department of
It really
not
is.
giving a poop about certain things that you really don't have to give a poop about. How you spend your time, etc. However, it's also coincides in our modern culture for so many of us with this convergence of peak career, teenage kids that are, you know, it's a much more cerebral style of parenting that requires a lot more brain space, aging parents for a lot of people, big costs like pressures, you know, the school fees versus the mortgage and all the things. Trying to be all the things. And I often wonder then, well, isn't it, thank gosh, it's a 10-year window of creeping towards, because it's a pruning almost, and that takes time, and a lot of things fall away over this next 10 years naturally.
Quite literally. And from a Chinese health perspective, we actually look at it as the autumn season. Now, autumn, I guess, kind of conjures up some really kind of dark imagery. But the positive of that, if we think of that really beautiful autumn season of the red leaves, and you get to put the scarves on and you get to wear the beautiful boots, but it is pruning. You know, leaves are quite naturally and appropriately falling away. And that isn't easy. We can't sugarcoat that. We can't gaslight that. It's not meant to be a stroll in the park to continue the autumn tree falling metaphor. And you're quite right. Our modern life, with all of the very many things that are going on, run counter to what often we actually really need. And so it is, like you say, a slow process. We don't have to wake up at 42 or 45 or 46 and suddenly, you know, cancel everything, leave a note on the kitchen bench, see you in 10 years time.
But a lot of people do.
Well,
Anyone who it's an interesting like time to chat with female friends, you know, if like I've never heard people talk about divorce or leaving their partners until this age.
Yes.
And I think that's really interesting. And a lot of people actually make it through and think, thank God I didn't act on that.
I know.
He's a really awesome guy.
He's a really good human, and the kids, I actually do like them, and I might keep them for another 10, you know. And that bandwidth, physiologically, biochemically, isn't there. You aren't imagining it. And we do need more care and TLC. There has to be some give in circumstances and situations, you know. There's just no way around it. And I think this is where talking about it, and this is where having those conversations, and where you're able to talk to your friends and say, oh my God, I almost got divorced yesterday, but I think we're okay today, you know, or oh my goodness, I almost, you know, shaved my head or dyed it pink or sent the kids to boarding school or quit my job, you know, in my lunch hour, you know. And those sort of friction moments give us an indication potentially to some change or some transition or some different way of doing things. It doesn't have to be the big extreme chop off the whole branch. We're just talking about a couple of leaves falling here. We don't have to prune the whole tree back to the trunk.
Yeah. And yet, as you say that, I think there's a beauty in that metaphor of pruning to the core and like really examining the core and only keeping what's essential and what not what fills us up, because actually life is service as well, and that fills us up too. So it's not about literally being alone in a field and going, thank God. Although
there are
sometimes that's
days.
actually really quite appealing. But I absolutely hear on the bandwidth, and I think that's so essential for people to not feel alone in. We adopted a dog last year, and I had no idea that my bandwidth was limited until we got him, because I couldn't cope. Like literally having to think about a different type of food for an extra creature in the house was like,
hard pass.
No, thanks. This thing needs a babysitter during the day, because I cannot work and deal with him and his desire to pee, poo, or chase a lizard during my workspace. And like it was such a fascinating, why can't I cope with this?
And you actually genuinely can't. You aren't making it up. There isn't something wrong with you. And I think a lot of women will internalize that and think, well, there's something wrong with me, but to be able to have that chat with your partner, with your kids. I mean, I don't know how some 14-year-olds are going to be really compassionate, some less. Certainly a 5-year-old isn't going to get that conversation. But to say, I actually physiologically do not have the bandwidth. I can do 4 things. What are the 4 things you need me most for? And everything out of that list has to be either completely pruned or handed over somewhere until further notice, if you want this version of me that's really highly functioning and not killing anybody.
Yeah. Beautifully summed up there. Lovely. Now, you talk about the launch pad for the Peri experience, actually dialing all the way back to our 20s. And that kind of conjured up for me as I was prepping. I'm like, oh my gosh, are there things like those tequila shots I did at the nightclub when I was singing with the DJ? Was that bad? Have I set myself up for a fail?
No.
Talk me through?
Oh, look, and I think I err on the side of this big, big, big picture, right? Which is helpful in some instances and not always helpful in others. But I think if as teens, or even prior to that, just in our houses as tiny children, we were exposed to just female experiences, and certainly in school actually being educated on our actual, physiology, what the bits are called, how they work, more than just the, ovum and the sperm. If we had that education early on, then there would be an understanding as, 20-year-olds that, we actually can get away with those, shots at 3 a.m. up to a point. And it's going to then be a point of like, well, do I want to have children? Yes or no? And how is that experience then going to feed into my later in life experiences? It's not about putting the fear of, God into a, 20-year-old that just wants to have fun and experience life and travel the world and look at, job prospects and all the things that you're doing in that era. But it's an understanding, an inherent inbuilt understanding that I wish every young person got at that entry level, to understand how their body works, how that's going to change how they feel about themselves and feel about their life, and how that is going to transition as you age. They might not necessarily care or pay that much attention. I can't imagine my 25-year-old self giving 2 hoots about what it was going to feel like at 49. But just that it was going to be this other weird, hard, but awesome experience that I was going to get to have, as opposed to, waking up at 35 going, I don't know, I still, even with all of my study, have to go out and teach myself how my body works. Like, this is not okay, So that's what I wish for the, those girls out in the club in their 20s to have in the back of their mind, that there is this understanding and honoring of their physical and mental, emotional selves.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? The education really does tend to stop at the pregnancy point if one has kids.
And even then, you're not even necessarily taught how or
not so
when,
much.
or your
Yeah.
cycle, or heaven forbid, talking about cervical mucus. I mean, good luck with that so yeah.
Yeah, so fascinating. It's like this whole extra set of bits of the rule book. The chapters are missing.
Yeah, they are literally missing.
Yeah. Brilliant that we're filling them in though. So
Yes.
I want to talk about perimenopause and menopause as medical problems. Because we obviously can't argue with what happens in the drop of estrogen and progesterone, and everything from muscle mass loss, bone density challenge in terms of maintaining it, dryness, all kinds of dryness, brain fog, and I want to ask you about how we balance that treating symptoms aspect of this, let's call it the decade of change, and nourishing self. Like, there has to be a bit of a balance. And how does TCM in our modern world see the use of HRT, for example? I'm just seeing a lot of quite scare us to death and make me do the program and make me take all the things, as like almost an only solution to claim your right to feeling healthy into your old age. And then I talked to my acupuncturist about it, and he's like, it's actually okay, and things are supposed to dwindle in a certain respect on the hormone front. But strength, if you live functionally and you stay strong, you don't really necessarily need to then reach for hormone replacement to protect yourself, as we're often told. And I'm not discounting the people that are making that choice. Who knows? You might talk to me in 6 months and I might say, Keri, it just got so intense. And I'm not judging, but it is a conversation that I'm just observing and looking at all the different parts of the conversation and wondering, as a TCM practitioner, what your wise words are in that regard.
And I'm so grateful that you brought this question up, because this is something that I talk about a lot, and I feel like I'm having a lot of conversations with friends, clients about, is that on top of every other damn thing that's going on, then there's this shame piece, not only like the internalized, long-standing shame of being a woman or all the weird and wonderful things that are happening in your body, but then the shame of you should either do HRT or you shouldn't do HRT, in whichever team. And for the love of goodness, can we please just choose some kind of middle path for ourselves and have that honored and respected by everybody else? Please and thank you. From a TCM perspective, like you say, in theory, our bodies are well, we've had our babies or we didn't have our babies, we've got a really easy, healthy, pain-free, symptom-free period, and then we hit 45, 47, 48, whatever, and our period starts to get longer and longer. There might have been a season of weird and wonderful estrogen symptoms in there where maybe you had slightly heavier periods, a few emotional outbursts, and then one day and you wake up 12 months later, you haven't had a period. Huzzah, you're out the other side and you're a wise woman. And in our modern world, that isn't likely to happen. We've all got a lot of pre-existing subclinical health issues, which will raise their beautiful little heads as we go in, and our hormones are fluctuating, that bandwidth that we said isn't quite right. And as an acupuncturist, I'm going to suggest you have acupuncture, and suggest if you choose to take HRT, that is absolutely fine. And I will put you in touch with, if you haven't already got your own beautiful GP, put you in touch with ones that I have worked with personally. But even those GPs will say to you that HRT isn't a magic bullet. There is no such thing as a magic bullet anywhere, that it can take quite some time, up to 12 months, one study said. It could be much, much quicker than that. But you still need to get that dose right. get the way that you're going to take the dose right. There's so many variations in there.
And a lack of education and our typical culture of more is more. I had a girlfriend who ended up having to have not a hysterectomy, but the partial hysterectomy because of a massive fibroid situation that resulted from a free-for-all on the
and that's really
estrogen
common.
front.
And that's actually really, really common and becoming more common because we do have this cultural belief that more is better. So even if you're choosing to take HRT because you turn up and you have not slept in 6 weeks and you are constantly wet and you have got your kids are still under the age of 6, I'm going to say, let's just pack you off. We're going to give you a beautiful treatment and let's pack you off and see if HRT might be for you. It doesn't have to be forever. It might get you over this hump. I don't know, right? But you're still going to be advised by any sensible GP to dial things down. If you can opt to take some time off work, if you're really unwell, they're going to say that. They're going to say, do you walk the dog in the afternoon? They're going, if they're a good doctor / acupuncturist / nutritionist / osteo, they're going to be suggesting all of these things. They're going to suggest a meditation class. They're going, there's no one magic bullet. And working with your whole system is actually the best way to take care of the 25 little symptoms along with the 2 or 3 giant ones. And I know that, no one really, I kind of half apologize while I'm having this conversation. It's like, if there was one magic bullet, goodness me, I would be like handing them out like candy. I'd be taking them, I'd be sending one to you. We'd all be on this magical thing. It is a transition and our culture isn't educated on how to navigate that. We don't tend to do processes very well in our culture. We don't have any kind of sort of model for it, it's a little bit like grieving in a way too, there's a process there that you kind of got to just navigate, and there's highs and lows and ebbs and flows to it. So Chinese medicine with that whole health view is going to look at each little aspect of you at the same time. And from my personal experience and with my other colleagues that we're having these chats with, nothing's bad or wrong. It's about what's right for you personally. And even on the British Menopause Society website and the Australian Menopause website, even they refer to complementary health practices as being, a part of the overall care. So I was quite shocked to see that in writing, but it's looking at the whole person.
100%. And something that chronic illness and moving through that and out the other end of it taught me was stop wishing you were like you were before.
There's no going back.
No. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to feel fantastic again.
Yeah.
It just means you're not going to be that person again. That skin of the snake has shared. There's something new to discover underneath. And I believe that is part of the invitation here.
It really
rather
is.
than really trying to treat every symptom that you could possibly quell so that you feel like you did before. It can just be a real disheartening battle that you spend far too much energy on. And I learned that in chronic illness, and I'm noticing like, I wish I felt, nope, you've learned that lesson.
No.
The work ahead is the work ahead, not the work here is not to look back and see how you can get back there.
Yeah. And in a culture that does tend to still glorify youthfulness and all of those things, we can long for that version of ourselves. Like we were saying before we started, like the person we were at 40 is this other mystical creature, and I'll often think, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that I wasn't going to feel like that again, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing, that you can embrace this new version of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of judgment, because I think that's a huge piece of this as well, judgment of self, thinking that everybody else is judging us. I've noticed I have ADHD anyway, so there is a bit of tangential
Oh, yeah.
crazy. It's just the way my mind has always been. Certainly kicked it up a notch in this phase of my life, I will
Absolutely.
say. But what I have found is I've created even better links and metaphors, even better tangential links, and then bringing it back to a theme and noticing a pattern and adding richness to an
Yes.
idea. And I think a lot of women think, gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. It's like, why are you? Where are you going? Is that exciting? Is there something in the new train of thought that you went on as an ADHD? Or I can say there's some really good
Mm.
things about losing your train of thought because it can
Yes.
land you in places that are even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and so judgment and thinking, gosh, I'm not as logical and thinking about everything in the same way.
Oh my
I
goodness.
get that that could probably be really scary if you've never been like that before.
Yes.
And I also get a bit of a touchy subject for many that our industrial revolution
Mm,
corporate workplaces don't really have a lot of leniency in the tangential thinking department.
no.
So, what are you finding there in
Oh,
terms of supporting people on the judgment piece and people just feeling like they're not, their mental acuity has changed? I'm not going to say is
yeah.
worse because I think it genuinely is just different.
It is different. And oh, look, there's a couple of pieces there. I mean, self-compassion is enormous, 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 enormous. To not pathologize yourself, but to
Mm,
understand that there is a very, very real physiological, mental, and emotional transition happening that is actually real. Like,
yeah.
I think because we can't see it, because we don't have any social structures that kind of talk about it necessarily or honor it, or it is still all quite new, or we think maybe it's all in our head or we've imagined it, or whatever the story is, it's difficult to trust that it is actually a real experience, that you aren't alone in that experience, and to have compassion in that moment for whatever hardship you're kind of currently just wrangling. Talking about trains of thought, let me see if I can hold all of these. I'm like, I've got these little like visual pegs. I'm a very, very visual person. So now I've got like these visual pegs. So concentrate, Keri. You need to be really smart here. Um,
I'm not
it's a,
judging you.
no, it's a perfect example, right? And
Yeah.
and to understand, I think that, we're probably going to get there in a minute to talk about the piece around what needs to change in the workplace, but that change first does happen with us. To understand that it's happening, to not judge your experience, to name it, to share it if it's at all possible with your mates, with your work colleagues, to just simply pause. Like, we understand, and Dr. Lisa Mosconi is sort of leading the research on this. She's got a brand new
Mm.
book. I haven't read it yet. I'm really looking forward to
I've
it.
read it. I've read it. It's
Oh,
so good. Yeah, I've
yes.
got a press copy because she's going to be on
Yes.
the show
Yes,
soon.
yes,
So I
yes.
feel
Amazing. Well,
privy.
I look forward to hearing that. There is a lot of actual change happening, and this is the conversation I have with a lot of women, that once they understand, like, oh, it's a real thing. Like,
Mm,
I'm not broken. So the reason why I called my Substack "You're Not Going Crazy" is because women will prefer to internalize and think they're going nuts and actually literally believe that
mm,
they're actually having some kind of mental episode, other than understand, have self-compassion for the fact that they are going through a physiological transition that is altering their brain chemistry, altering their blood chemistry, having them have all sorts of feelings, whether it's tiredness or anger or sadness or whatever it might be. And that most everyone else is too busy or too tired to be bothered judging you, let's be clear.
mm.
And that if we can have even just transitory chats in the office or in the workplace or wherever you're having those moments, to know that you're not alone, is a really, really great start.
100%. And one of the big things that I've noticed in my pruning of certain leaves is that old me used to say yes to doing things of service for people that I hated doing. But it was to be nice, it was to people please, it was to not actually to people please, but to make a contribution. So, at a school, like everyone has to contribute. Well, I think everyone has to. I didn't get the clarity around you get to articulate how you would like to contribute. I would just wait for emails to go out and then people to say, we need someone to do this. And I'd be like, I could do that. And I'm like, why did I say yes to that? Whereas new Alex is like, there is no way I'm contributing in any way other than this way. And I would like to champion that in a really positive, generous way, because it's something I can do with my eyes closed, confidently, no matter whether my brain's falling apart that day or not. And I can show up and feel excited and energized to contribute and be of service. That for me is one of my favorite parts of estrogen levels declining, is starting to get so much more clarity, so much more of a visceral feeling of when you say yes to something that you wanted to say no to, that you basically just stop saying yes to things and start doing the work to articulate how you want to show up better. I think that's one of my favorite invitations of this phase.
Yeah. And that clarity and boundaries you speak about is like, they are those gems of this peri season. And from a Chinese health perspective, we look at the metal element. So if you even think about the actual element of metal, it offers clarity, sharpness. There's no messing around with that kind of energy. You know exactly what you can do, how you'd like to offer it. You've thought about it. You're clear on it. It's been, offered and delivered in a really clear, boundaried fashion that can also obviously be warm and,
Yeah, of course, because it's coming from a generous place. And I think that's the bit to get. You don't have to become an asshole.
No.
Start saying, nope, not in my bandwidth. Like, I don't think we need to be abrasive.
No.
We can still be our beautiful, kind selves. We just need to reflect more and think, how do I want to show up in that way? Because I want to show up, but what do I want that to look like? And that can be for relationships, kids,
every sector of your life. And I think if you do find yourself that snarling animal in the corner, then it's not because you're an evil human or you're a horrible mother or partner or wife or sister. It's because you actually need to gift yourself or ask for more space for that time to reflect and get clear on what you need. Which is the hard piece.
It is the hard piece. I had a family meeting about that 2 days a month that I'm currently experiencing. Like, okay, this is what those 2 days look like. This is what that needs to look like from a who's doing what. I'll let you know when day one has arrived of that 2-day window. And my husband and son have been amazing. Like,
well, and this is the thing. People aren't horrible. Generally speaking, if we give people an opportunity, we talk to them about what's happening. Most of the people in our life are more than happy to be kind.
That's it. Exactly. They're the people that love us the most. So if we articulate it, in a calm way, away from the blow up day, then they'll just steer clear on the blow up day.
They're not idiots. You've told them what's happening. They know that's the day that they hide in the cupboard. It's perfectly fine. It's a great cupboard. They're really comfortable there.
They've got a lot of space. It's great. Yeah. Or I'll hide in the cupboard. I'm easy.
I don't mind either.
And so I wanted to ask you about like pressure points as well. And if there are any like points that we can focus on in this time that we can just kind of apply pressure, massage with a couple of deep breaths that are really helpful for big emotions or feeling scattered all of a sudden. Some of those common things that come up, the headaches that people start experiencing that they haven't had since puberty.
Look, the good old diaphragm breathing gets trotted out. But it's a thing because, if we are breathing all the way up here, then we're in probably a more fight or flight space. We're less likely to have access to our clear thoughts. You know, a lot of women will say to me, like, their biggest fear, even if they're experiencing painful periods or you know, hot sweats or other things, the biggest fear is feeling vague or foggy, or like they, you know, open their mouth and forget what they're going to say. So again, stopping and giving yourself that moment to access the full space of your brain in a really calm fashion is actually really important and helpful. There's a point in between the webbing of your thumb and your middle finger that's kind of a bit gristly and a bit painful. So that's really good for headaches, but it's also generally for the face and the head. So that can just, a few slow, gentle breaths and a bit of a squeeze of that tender space in there on both sides is enough to kind of bring you back into your body. If you're sort of sitting at your desk or doing something where you can't necessarily give yourself a nice belly rub.
Yeah.
Stomach massage is really, really helpful. It's going to support your liver. It's going to support your gut function. It's going to support your large intestine, all of those sorts of things. So maybe even after your shower in the evening, or when you're lying in bed and your head's racing, to kind of just gently bring the energy back down to your belly is a really, really nice way to self-soothe and calm the mind and bring yourself back to a easeful pace to sleep.
I did that for myself at about 4 o'clock this morning when I woke up in a little hot, sweaty panic.
Yeah.
The doom sweats. That's fun.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there is nothing sensible that is going to be thought about or like worked on at between 2 and 4. Yeah.
No, there's
not
not.
at all.
So I just massaged my belly. So I'm glad I was on the right track, because
no,
that's what it just felt like I needed to do.
Yeah. And, you know, that's the as our estrogen can go down, obviously, you know, it does a little bit of a zigzag on the way down, which is just a fun time. But in those lower estrogen moments, our adrenals will give us a shot to try and sort of wake our ovaries up.
Wow.
Yeah. And
like,
so
guys,
like, hello, hi, I'm just you know, 1-800-ovary, like, can you, no, silence.
can I get some estrogen?
That's
Aisle
just-
18.
Yeah, and so we will often, I mean, that's not the whole picture or reason, but that kind of wake up panic of like, I've left the iron and the oven and every other appliance on, and maybe the house is burning down, and no, that's just me that's burning down, it's fine. Another calming point, which is like 3 down in the midline of your wrist, and the point that is often used for those seasick bands is actually a point on the pericardium channel, which is also really good when you're feeling anxious. And it's a point
just gave me an instant deep breath.
Yeah, so it's a point that we say calms the Shen, and the Shen is the spirit of the heart that when we're panicked or hot can flee. So we want to bring that Shen back to be able to rest safely and for us to feel safe and calm. But that's a good one. It's Shen.
So, am I in the right spot?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
So, guys, you have to do this. I'm going to put a picture of myself up on social for the people listening.
Everybody's going to have a bruise on their pericardium point shortly. If you've got those little, we'll often send clients home with those little take-home sticky acu is there, so then you can just give them a little squeeze.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Don't buy a packet of those on Amazon cheaply, by the way. I made that mistake and they don't even stick. So yeah.
No, you'd probably be better off getting one of those old-fashioned seasick bands with the funny little bead that's on them.
Yeah, good idea.
I mean, if you, or just come and have some acupuncture. That's a good idea also.
That's always a good idea. In terms of screening for a good acupuncturist,
you can't go wrong as far as their actual qualifications. And from there, it is about trusting if they're a person that you think you would like to hang out with. And, you know, in this era of socials and blogs and things, most acus will have some kind of social presence. If they're super busy, they mightn't have a huge a lot of posts and bits and bobs going on, but generally speaking, we can get a sense around the topics that they're really passionate about. And you can get a feel for who they are. So even if they're not necessarily, I can think of a couple of beautiful accus in their very early 30s who I'd be very happy to go and see, who've just got that knowledge and warmth, even though they're not necessarily in their late 40s. So you don't have to be
it doesn't have to be someone who's been there.
Yeah, that they've just got that knowledge base and that tenderness that I personally, my acupuncturist over the last couple of years, just doesn't matter what random mood I'm in, she has just that capacity to meet me and be kind and pop the points in and sort the things out.
I couldn't agree more. And, the kinds of people that I gravitate towards are the people who are very yin in there, because often when you're going to see a health professional, or when you get to the yoga class, you can quite often be in a very yang state, or there's all this stuff going on, or I had to rush to get here. And just that calm, it's like the late night radio kind of romance tracks.
Well, and that's
DJ.
I mean, we need to be around, we are pack animals, and to be around other, calm, centered nervous systems.
Yes, look to the flight attendants. Are they panicking? Look to your acupuncturist. Are they panicking?
They know where the exits are. They've got their tray of peanuts. We're ready to go.
Yeah, so it's like meditation. I often talk about some of my first coaching clients and people saying, "Oh no, I don't meditate. I can't stand it." And I'm like, "What can't you stand about it?" "Oh, their voice." I was like, "What? Whose voice?" "Oh, the one on the app." I'm like, "So you've tried one app? All right, we got to find a voice that you like tuning into." And I really think health professionals, anyone we put on our team, they have to be people we like tuning into.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. It can be, if you are, and this is the bonus of maybe seeing people who have their own network that they can then, put you in touch with. It can be tricky and feel tiring when you're in a bad place or a delicate place to continue showing up and telling your story and hoping that this person is your person. But it's worth it when you get there and to get that care.
100%. And I wanted to ask you, because you put this down as something that you can talk about, and it's very real, because while I did talk about some people getting divorced and some people out there are single and dating, and that could probably bring up a whole bunch of self-judgment if you're going through this phase as well. And any words you have around dating in this phase of life, because it's such, half the time you don't even know who this new version of you is, let alone projecting to someone else.
No, oh my goodness. And this could be a whole nother podcast on its own, with perhaps a different rating, but but
you can go there, Keri. It's okay. It's fine. As long as I don't put it on social media and get shadow banned, we're good. This is a safe space.
But talking about judgment, I had this really crippling timeline in front of me, self-created timeline.
I love that, the imaginary timeline.
Oh my God. And I was hurtling towards it at great speed, where I was going to fall off this cliff and be undateable, unlikable, unattractive, unsexual, like every and that I got to that self-imposed cutoff point and I was still single.
What age did you say this cliff was going to exist?
It kept sort of limping 6 months in front of me.
I remember my cliff was 20, it was 30.
Yeah.
Way back in the day. And I remember making a pact with a friend saying, we can just be crazy cat lady flatmates and no one's going to want us. It's ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. And I think I was 46 when I met and I joked, okay, quick because all of this is going to like fall off. You've probably got 6 good months left. So if you want to date me,
Enjoy.
like this is it. But yeah, and I was, growing my silver out, and I was like, who is actually going to date a silver? Like who, like it was beyond my comprehension that actually anybody could possibly, and people are going, oh, don't be silly, Keri, and they're trying to, say nice things to me. It's not that I think poorly of myself, but those belief systems, culturally attached belief systems, or things that we see just in we're deep. They were there. That you don't see a silver-haired woman and think, oh, what a hottie, I might date her. And so it's been a really delightful, fun experiment to have all of that proved completely wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that Julia Roberts picture and reflection recently.
Yes.
Her niece just having a very no makeup, we're at home playing cards, I think it was, or a puzzle. Such a gorgeous moment. And then the internet just was outraged that she'd let herself go. And what on earth? She's aged like 20 years overnight.
Where was her full face of red carpet makeup? And you're like, no. That's how women, but also we don't see other women of that age, our age, first thing in the morning, chatting at the kitchen table. Yeah. Movies, we don't see what that looks like. So then we see our own reflection. It's like, good grief, crumbs.
Yeah, I've made a no filter commitment.
Same.
In it, because I just was starting to really feel that everything was so manicured and so intensely doctored. For what? Why? It's not real. And then the longer we all try to pretend to not be real, the more the fall off the cliff is going to be.
Well, this is it, right?
Like those perfect LinkedIn photos, and then you have the work meeting, you're like,
was that an AI generated version of you?
Yeah, I never want someone to think that about me. No. And I think there are grey-haired hotties that are absolutely dateable. We just need to see more of them. So we see the full gamut of the human experience.
Yeah. And quite possibly how you see yourself, or the stories you've been told, or the stories you've, I don't know, created somewhere, it's not actually how you're going to be seen. Yeah.
Ugh. And so how have you come through that? What have you noticed about just really rejecting that?
Clumsy, awkward, entertaining kind of a way. Like humor is the last sexy crutch, which will continue to age with us, right, Alex? Yeah. So it doesn't matter what happens, which bit falls off, we'll still be funny. And this is what I'm clinging to. It's actually been really, really fun. I mean, there's been a whole lot of hard things too, but the honesty in this age has been really beautiful, and has actually, whilst that has felt very scary and very vulnerable, there's kind of nowhere else to go really at this point. Yeah. I don't have the bandwidth to keep up smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, while there are a lot of things about, say, Sex and the City and the new iteration with them all in their 50s that are highly manicured and highly, so fictional in a lot of regards, there are so many fantastic, real, rough issues just with your girlfriends, lay it all out on the table. Why do we need to hold anything back here? Why do we need to hold things back from our partners, even if it means we have a massive fight, while we work through it or work out what comes out the other side of it.
But also sharing what we're going through with our partners and giving them the benefit of the doubt to actually understand and care. Or if they can't understand, which is actually really quite understandable, because I don't always understand what's happening.
Yeah.
At least to say, this is how I'm feeling. It's not going to make sense, which, and And I bring the humor in, like, which weird body part do you want to know about today? You know, are we going to talk about the menopausal vaginal microbiome, or are we going to talk about the importance of protein? Like, you just tell me which bit you want to learn about today, and I'll share, and we'll just continue on with our beautiful life together.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, like, if that's something that you're, or, you know, is it hot, or am I having a hot flush? Like, I don't know how many times because we've had the hottest summer. And I'm like, it must, I'm sure he just sort of glazes over. Like every half hour, I'm like, is it hot? Is it hot? Like, it's just
I am
entertaining at this
asking my
point.
family members that a
Yeah.
lot. I'm like, is it hot or is it just me?
Or I'll, you know, head to my phone and I'll sort of mutter, oh yeah, it's 32 degrees, it's hot. And, you know, like that's just the sort of ongoing background soundtrack to our life. And I don't know, he's still there.
That's good. Lovely. I love that. I've got a girlfriend who has a wife, and she's talking about both of them going
Yes,
through perimenopause
yes,
and how how complicated it is, because they're both going through all the things
yes.
and completely differently. And
I've
I
been
find
wondering about this.
that a really interesting trajectory or variance of the experience in same-sex couples.
Yes.
And then like the gay blokes have got it really good.
They're
Not
just
going
hot
through any
flush
of it,
free
not
altogether.
having to witness it and us in their partner, just carry on
Carry on
as
as
you
you
were.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now speaking of boys, men, workplace,
Yep.
differences in this age group. I just want to touch on that as we start to kind of round things off, because that can be really tricky in itself. Like,
Yeah.
what are you seeing there?
Look,
Advice?
it's another of the big picture pieces. And I think, again, conversations where it's accessible and appropriate with the people you work with to just normalize. I mean, if it's appropriate, it's not always going to be appropriate depending on your where you are in the sort of, you know, leadership scale of things.
Seniority can be a really big challenge.
And I mean, there is a Senate inquiry at the minute happening in New South Wales where they're going into, you know, what that looks like in the workplace. And I mean, that study apparently will be done by the end of this year, but it's looking into, you know, is there going to be a need for women to be able to access services? What does that look like for productivity? What does that look like for like staff leaving? Because a lot of women are choosing to leave the workplace, go on leave, or take time in some fashion or another because they're not able to cope with their health symptomology. And oh goodness, you know, the workplace isn't prepared for it. We've only just got our head around mat leave and paternal leave, you know. And so I think, you know, from a workplace point of view, this is really where that cutting edge stuff is happening and will need to change very, very swiftly because, again, depending on the demographic of your office, 12% of your workforce is a lot of people. And if they're senior leaders in your team, you're going to lose an incredible wealth of knowledge, leadership skills, and so much more if women over the age of 40 or 50 are feeling like there's no other option but to go. So I think, I mean, choosing to access your own self-care, getting in touch with HR, because they are the sort of coalface of these changes, I would imagine, and certainly hope in the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also just back to that example of volunteering that I shared earlier, it could be a really again, it could be a real opportunity to prune job descriptions into true zones of genius. This is something that since I realized I was neurodivergent, I thought back to different corporate times, different chats that different bosses had had with me, where, you know, I was really good at 80% of my job, like sensational, always overperforming, always overgiving, because it was like an endless fountain, because it was my zone of genius. Like I was just great at training, teaching, and motivating. And instead of being given an assistant 2 days a week for the admin, or 3 mornings or whatever, I was performance managed. And you just think, gosh, that is so toxic.
Really?
And in perimenopause and menopause, I'm thinking, gosh, imagine performance managing someone with 30 years of knowledge through their career span.
Heartbreaking.
I was 25 at the time, a young bright button, but I'm thinking of people our age and how much is in that brain and how much you stand to lose by ticking them off with performance management instead of saying, look, I'm noticing there are parts of the job that you're just not loving at the moment.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about that? Can we talk about a different mix? Is there someone else that really enjoys doing that type of work that we could do a bit of a reshuffle here?
Yeah.
I just think we could get a lot more creative in corporate in general.
In general, for sure. And, even just simple things throughout the day, you need breaks. You need to switch your brain off. It doesn't have to be for the entire day, but just alternating tasks, making sure that you actually eat lunch. I mean, hustle culture has told us that we have to skip the meals and not, stop and make sure that we've had, drinks. And it's like our brains they're literally not going to function.
Yeah,
without
absolutely. That. And so from a TCM perspective in food, what are some of the most nourishing foods for this time?
Going back to the boring basics. It's always a really, really,
it's not sexy. It's actually just real food.
Sexy, real food. Cooked food, like from a Chinese health perspective, we tend to err like away from lots of raw cold food. So, raw fruit and veg when it's super hot is fine. Obviously, they're in season, and we can kind of deal with it fine. But our digestive system isn't working at 100% throughout this season, as felt by some of that weight gain and that whole piece. So making sure that really simple, basic food, protein needs to absolutely go up. Slow cooked meats, roast veggies, leafy greens by the handful, water.
Rinse
Meat and
3 veg.
Yeah. And
I know that's how I feel best.
Yeah. And the thing is, we can get away with a tiny bit. We absolutely can't get away with what we used to be able to. Our metabolism isn't slowing down as such, but it is processing foods in a quite different way. Yeah,
that's a good way to put it.
It feels like things are slowing down, but it's just not processing things as effectively. And our liver especially isn't going to thank us for that extra glass of Chardonnay or that third coffee.
Gosh, no. In fact, it'll get really angry at us.
It'll get really upset.
My heart gets really angry at me. It just goes dum, dum, dum. Yes. I'm like, sorry, I won't do it again.
Yeah.
And then, it's become a birthdays and Christmas or super special catch up with a girlfriend type situation. I might have a glass.
Yes.
But other than that, frankly, I'm not interested. Yeah. And I don't need to make a big, for me personally, it's not a big sober statement. I'm grateful that I have a healthy ability to modulate alcohol as and when I need. I always have. Very, very thankful, because I know that's really hard for a lot of people, especially in Anglo-Saxon drinking cultures. It can become a vice so easily without people realizing. But it is definitely setting off a whole bunch of alarm bells that it didn't used to.
No, and it doesn't have to be
this ain't
forever.
good for you.
Well,
that's what Lara Bryden said. She said, don't worry, I'm not condoning alcohol, but I am also going to let you know that your system will not freak out about it the way it currently is once you're out the other end.
This is the thing. I think we have that doomsday thing of, I'm never going to drink champagne again. I'm never going to enjoy coffee again, or I'm never going to do whatever it is. That's not the whole truth. This is a transition.
Yeah. Our nervous systems will settle down.
They will.
Yes.
They will.
And there are so many beautiful Chinese herbs. And I wanted to ask you about this to finish, because obviously, circadian syncing is a
Yes.
very important priority, to try and like look to the sun in the
Mm-hmm.
mornings and be outside, at the bookends of the day at least,
Yep.
if you can. But herbal support can be magic. And I wanted you to just throw us a few favorites that you see have really great results. And then for any self-helping people, to just maybe give us a bit of advice on quality
Yeah.
screening, because that can be a huge minefield as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Look, there are some wonderful, so if you went to a traditional Chinese herbalist, they're going to mix up singular herbs,
Yeah.
and it's going to be this beautiful potion. It may well be dirt that you're given to drink, essentially.
Yeah.
And you
Yep.
can be guaranteed that the quality and the dose, and it's actually right for you. They've taken a really, really long and extensive case history. They've treated you. They've got a whole picture of what's happening in your life, and those herbs are made for you. There are other wonderful pre-made herbs that you've got fun non-Chinese names, which is like menopause 1 formula or menopause 2 formula, depending on whether you're the hot menopause or the cold menopause. And those herbal formulations are really great for a general picture of people, and can deal with the hot formula, for example, is a beautiful one that I will hand out often for those classic hot flushes, and dials it down really, really, really well. The trick with any other food-based supplement is that it is like, I think they call it a food ceutical. So it's a wonderful thing to add into your diet. It works in the same way as herbs that you might put in your cooking, or herbal teas that you might have. So it's got the benefit. So for example, sage. Sage tea is a really beautiful cooling tea. I will often drink that with rose. So that will have that effect of cooling you down. And if you have it every single day, it's going to have that cumulative effect. But it's not necessarily at a therapeutic dose. So if you were then going to have, for example, ashwagandha, which is often called withania, or black cohosh is another really popular herb that a lot of people would have heard about. You can buy those herbs at the supermarket or off the shelf at the health food store, and they're going to operate in that food ceutical type of way. They're not necessarily going to be at the therapeutic dose designed for you to help with that particular symptomology. So they're a really lovely thing to add in. They are able to modulate your stress and to help with sleep issues and all these sorts of things. And some people will often say, oh, well, I've tried that herb and it didn't work. And possibly it wasn't the right herb for you at the time, or it wasn't necessarily at a dose that is specific for your health needs. So, but generally speaking, things like black cohosh are great, with withania or ashwagandha, both difficult words to say. And sage is another one that everyone sort of can access and pop in their tea.
Brilliant. Oh, so good. And
no such thing as a short answer with me.
No such thing as a short answer. I've absolutely loved our chat, Keri, and I know so many people will just have gone, oh yeah, I feel like that, or oh yeah, I've been through that, or oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
No, you're not.
I was definitely getting that sense throughout the whole thing. Where can we find you?
Far too often on Instagram. My website and my Substack, which is You're Not Going Crazy, because you're not going crazy.
I love that. You are not going crazy. Thank you so much
Pleasure,
for
Alex.
sharing
Thank
all
you.
your goodness. I hope you loved today's show as much as I loved bringing it to you. I want to remind you that if you are someone who craves a low tox community that is judgment-free, full of empowerment, has health professionals and building health professionals that can support you, as well as me in there answering questions multiple times a week, I want to invite you to join the Low Tox Club. for the price of less than a cup of coffee a month. You have an annual membership for $49 Australian, so it's about $30 US or Euro, that allows you to have a member masterclass every single month with a health professional or global expert from the podcast, where we have them to ourselves for an hour to ask questions and deep dive further. You have the beautiful supportive chat group. You have Q&As with me answering questions. We read books and talk about them, and a whole bunch more. You can head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the explore tab, and join the club is the very first option on that list. Of course, we have over 10 evergreen courses that you can jump into anytime, whether it's navigating everyday low tox swaps with our Go Low Tox signature course, whether you have kids and you're wanting to know how to best support them with our Low Tox Kids course, whether you're planning a family and looking at a healthy low tox preconception journey, reducing inflammation, especially the chronic kind, with our Inflammation Ninja course, many other courses. You can again head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the courses tab, and you'll see all of the options, which includes a business course, my Low Tox Method program. A lot of people don't know, but I was doing a lot before starting Low Tox Life in 2009, and I was a business consultant across hospitality, health, retail, and cosmetics. I have been in business consulting for a very long time, so I absolutely adore helping people move into the low tox space or develop their low tox businesses. So that's a way I can support you. And then, of course, there's our wonderful social media communities at Low Tox Life on Instagram, and of course, the website with over 250 gluten-free recipes, blogs, downloadable PDFs to help you navigate wanting to get rid of synthetic fragrances in your school or office. I could go on. So head to lowtoxlife.com, see what takes your interest or fancy, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast community. I love reading your reviews. I appreciate every follow and subscribe, and I want to just remind you to finish off that if there's anything you heard that you found interesting from a medical or scientific perspective, it is intended as education only. Please always chat to a health professional who knows you and your situation best. I'll see you next week. Bye.